Welcome to FreightWaves Today. It is Friday. I am so glad it's Friday. By the way, football started. I don't know if are you a football fan?
The Hall of Fame game was last night, right?
It's look, we've got the preseason. You've got some college is going to start soon. Are you a college football fan?
I mean, a little bit. I will watch it, but we're more.
What's your sport? Is soccer?
We're more like pro football. Like,
you're Green Bay, right?
Big Packers fans. When you go to Green Bay, you gotta be a Packer fan. So.
We're gonna be an on-site in Green Bay in next month.
Looking forward to that. 20th, I think.
I'm not sure the date, but a lot going on. This week has just flown by.
Yeah.
Absolutely, so much happening. Full of news. We have earnings. We're going to get into that later on. Every day is new earnings. We have our reporter, John Kingston. He is the one and only. When he hears the word fuel, we'll get the update on fuel and oil from John Kingston, but we will also hear all about some of these lawsuits. This really incredible lawsuit that involved Penske. It really is in light of the Montgomery judgment. We're going to hear from John Kingston about what that means for the overall freight sector. And then we have the one and only legendary Mark Hazelwood is going to be here. There's nobody that knows more about fuel than Mark Hazelwood. He's been around this industry for so many years. He is an institution in so many ways. We're going to get into telematics. We're going to talk about smart labels with Sam Sara's engineering, head of vice president of product engineering for Samsara, is going to talk all about smart labels, which is a really cool technology. You and I got a preview of that. And then we're going to round up the show with the CEO of Saia, who is building out their national LTL network. Tell us about the state of freight. And then, of course, we will wrap the show up with freight expectations with Matt Leffler. A lot of legal conversations, continuation of the conversation we'll have with John Kingston. Let's get into the headlines.
We kick things off with a major safety recall that's pulling nearly 6,000 brand new trucks off the road. Packer is recalling 5,919 model, year 2027 Kenworth and Peterbilt trucks because of a critical defect in the power distribution center, the box that routes electrical power through the cab. The problem traces back to a broken air filter at supplier PKC Group North America that caused oil to leak into the soldering process of the printed circuit boards. If the box fails, drivers can lose engine power, anti-lock brakes, exterior lights, windshield wipers, or the defroster, and only the ABS malfunction gets a dashboard warning. PACCAR reported the issue to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration on July 27th, and the company estimates just 0.3% of recalled trucks actually have the defect. Owners should watch for a notification letter scheduled for September 25th, and dealers will replace the box for free if the serial number matches the supplier's list. Meanwhile, a sophisticated fraud scheme is draining inventory of trucking suppliers across Western Canada. Saskatchewan RCMP are investigating after 12 heavy-duty trucking and transportation businesses shipped truck tires, engine oil, and trailer parts on what appeared to be legitimate credit card orders, only to have the payments ultimately fail. The fraud investigation began in March after reports from across the province, with targeted companies including automotive suppliers, tire shops, and fuel distributors in communities like Battleford, Weyburn, Hudson Bay, and Kindersley. Callers placed phone orders and provided credit card details that showed approved and pending transactions, prompting businesses to ship the products by courier before discovering the cards had declined. The inquiry now extends beyond provincial borders, with authorities identifying related incidents throughout Western Canada, though police have not filed charges or disclosed the value of losses. Finally, a massive workforce reduction is hitting Ohio as a truck manufacturer exits a historic assembly operation. International Motors is laying off 1,341 employees at 2 manufacturing facilities in Springfield, Ohio, following the sale of the operations to Canadian defense and commercial vehicle manufacturer Rochelle. According to a WARN notice filed with the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, International expects the sale to close October 2nd, with virtually all employees at the Springfield Assembly Plant and Truck Specialty Center terminated effective that date. The layoffs will affect approximately 1,314 employees at the assembly plant and 27 workers at the Truck Specialty Center, with about 1,137 assembly plant workers and 21 Truck Specialty Center employees represented by the United Auto Workers. The facility has been used primarily for contract manufacturing under an agreement with a major automotive company, and that contract is scheduled to expire September 30th, 2026. Rochelle plans to transform the sprawling campus, which spans more than 2 million square feet on roughly 500 acres, into a U.S.-based production hub for commercial, specialty, and armored vehicles.
So much happening. I mean, defense spending is a big deal. There's an investment. These auto manufacturers, Julie, are talking about. General Motors has said they want to do more in defense. Sort of reminds us of World War II, where we had the auto manufacturers were really putting out, defense and weapons, and it's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I hate the job loss. You always hate to see that, but I am sure it will be
We
followed by
classified
new
as a job
jobs.
loss as a rotation of jobs, right? Because these
Well, you
are
would think they're going to come back, right, from Rochelle, right? They
Yeah.
won't be employed anymore by International Motors,
but
but
maybe they hired
someone's
them
going to
back. I
have
think
to. Yeah.
technically, if International Motors lays them off because they're no longer their employees, so we'll see. We'll keep an eye on that. Obviously important. Talking about jobs, John Kingston, how you doing, sir?
Not bad. Yourself?
Doing well. So let's talk about the jobs market right now. You have been reporting on the jobs market. Tell us, what does it look like in overall jobs and in freight specifically?
Boring. Very boring this month. Jobs in truck transportation were up 100 jobs. That's it. And after all the machinations of the past few months, the number of jobs out there is the same as it was in February. So truck transportation jobs, and remember, that's an independent owner operator is not in there. Okay, so I want to make that point. But the number of truck transportation jobs surveyed by the BLS has really, I mean, it's going up and down, but it's where it is, and it's where it was in July, the same place it was in February, and it's down from last year.
By the way, John, I think that's super encouraging, because the fear has been, we've talked about it frequently on the show, Dr. Miller, Jason Miller, who was on the show a couple of weeks ago, talked about the fact that he believed that fleets were going to overcorrect and hire too many drivers, as they tend to do in these up cycles. It's not happening. That's not what the data says. Now, you mentioned the BLS data does not have owner-operators. It's something we've talked about before. But owner-operators are not, I mean, there is a lot of pressure on owner-operators right now in the market because of the regulatory compliance elements. But really, there isn't a case to be made that the larger fleets are adding trucks, according to this data.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine if you really dove into the data and looked over years worth, there's probably got to be some correlation between the number of truck transportation jobs and the number of owner operators out there, independent owner operators out there, just because they're serving the same market. So at a certain point, if you've got a really strong market, you're going to hire more types of jobs that will be reflected in the data, and probably the number of independent owner operators goes up too, and then conversely the other way as well. So I wouldn't imagine that as a big divergence in the direction of the numbers between people who are, let's say, W-2 workers that can get surveyed by the BLS and those who are out on their own.
I think this is great. I'm glad that the industry is not overcorrecting. Like I said, it's something that the industry has known to do, is overcorrect, and it's encouraging that the cycle may live on longer. We've talked about it being a super cycle. Again, I think this is exhibit A of why we will have a longer cycle. Let's move on to oil. Tell us a little bit about the state of Hormuz. What are we hearing? What is happening? What's moving? What's not moving right now, John?
Well, I think what's really notable is that whenever there's a hint that there's going to be some progress, the market really, you talk about overcorrecting. I won't say they overcorrect, but they react very strongly to that, more than they do for prospects of nothing happening. So over the weekend, when there were suggestions that maybe we were moving toward a deal, the market, the first couple of days of this week, really sold off. The past couple of days, it's been up. Right now, if it's settled right now, let's say, when I say it, I mean, I'm talking about the price of ultra low sulfur diesel on CME. If it's settled right now where it was, it'd be up about 12 cents in 2 days. So you can see, it's kind of corrected upward as the prospect for peace that we got all excited about over the weekend is starting to fizzle out. But 12 cents is less than a drop. So people, traders just do not want to be caught short if suddenly there's peace in our time. And they don't want to be on the wrong side of that trade. So they react rather vehemently to any prospect that maybe this is coming to some sort of end, which, as we know, it really isn't. Hopefully it will soon, but the numbers that are going through the Strait of Hormuz have not shown any significant increase over the last several days.
Now, John, are they biased to the downside? It sounds like they are not, as you talked about, not wanting to be caught short in the market. Anytime there's news of resolution, it looks like they are responding to that. And that's keeping a lid on oil. Is your view that that really, as soon as there is true belief and conviction of resolution that we'll see oil prices drop?
I would think in the beginning it would drop, but as you know, I've really been pretty consistent. And when I look at the numbers, when I look at the loss of production, the loss of refining capacity that's been damaged and is going to take a long time to get fixed, I still think we are facing some sort of what's the word I'm looking for? But some kind of resolution that's going to be bullish. I just still don't think.
Do you think price of oil and diesel, therefore diesel, at some point going to go up? What's our crack spread, John?
It's still up about, depending on how you measure it, it's still, about $1.75 or something like that. The other thing too is diesel on CME compared to gasoline is now like $1. And that's like incredible. When I went back to see when was the last time that diesel was under gasoline. It wasn't that long ago. It was like spring of 2025. But now that spread is gigantic. And it really, a lot of that is not Middle East. A lot of that is Russia. Ukraine's ability to continue striking the Russian refining sector, which is very heavily oriented toward making diesel, is really having an impact. Remember, it's one big global market, so the fact that the U.S. does not really consume Russian diesel, or if it does, it's very small amount, does not matter. It's all one big connected waterbed, as I always give my age by talking about a waterbed, but I just can't help. I love that analogy. A waterbed, if you push it down on one end, the water moves throughout the whole waterbed. That's kind of like all the diesel market is.
John, you've dated yourself. Have you been in a waterbed?
I know I have.
I remember when I was little, people had
They had waterbeds. They were
Yeah.
cool in the 70s and 80s, I think. I mean,
Yeah.
as a kid, you wanted a waterbed until you realized they were really uncomfortable.
Oh my gosh.
I had a fraternity brother who actually slept in one in the fraternity house.
Really, really kind of nasty after a while.
Yeah,
waterbeds. So John, real quick on Russia, Ukraine. I mean, it looks like there's some momentum. The Ukrainians are blowing up these logistics warehouses across. They're also blowing up refineries. I mean, in your perspective, I know you're not a military reporter, but are we seeing? Is there a belief in the financial markets and oil markets that Ukraine's got the upper hand here? Do we believe that there's going to continue to be pressure on energy prices related to the Ukraine conflict?
Well, I think that's what you're seeing in the diesel price. I mean, you're not talking about a significant loss of upstream production, of Russian production, which has not really been getting hit that much. What's been getting hit are refineries, and those refineries are constructed to maximize diesel output. So I think that is what you're seeing here in that spread. The spread on diesel, I think, is only partly related to what's going on in the Middle East. I think it's a Russian story. And so, yes, in that sense, I think that what's going on with the price of diesel is very much related to Russia, Ukraine, more so than the Middle East.
Julie, do you watch any of these videos of these like warehouses in Russia being blown up?
No, I mean,
These
I
are like
try
the
not to. I
equivalent
just can't.
of Amazon, and the Ukrainians are just. I think they've blown up something like 15 so far, and there's only like 40 of them in the entire country that are of the scale they are. It's absolutely breathtaking across. You can see it on X.
Yeah, I mean, they're only less scary than the videos you see of these poor people out there, naked, whether they're soldiers or there's just a civilian. There was a Ukrainian civilian. He was like a fruit stand seller, being chased around by a drone. I mean, the outcome of that is inevitable,
Yeah,
and,
it's really sad. It's sad the amount of
just
civilian casualties that are related to this conflict. So John, let's talk a little bit about this Penske lawsuit. Julie, you've got some thoughts here.
Yeah, so Crane versus Liberty Lane, right? I know you've been tracking this story, and Penske getting pulled back in to the lawsuit, not just as a reversal of them being dismissed, but then the vicarious liability angle as well. Do you want to give us some details?
So, I mean, this is sort of a classic case of a fatal crash in Texas in 2018. So remember, you can't just talk about Penske, because Penske's got multiple companies by that name. They're all, interwoven and entangled. So Penske Logistics is primarily a carrier. It has a brokerage arm called Penske Transportation, PTM.
Management, probably.
I'm drawing a blank. What did I have it as?
Probably, if it's PTM, I would guess it's Penske Transportation Management.
Yeah, right. Yes, thank you. Okay, so when this case first went to trial, two things happened. There was summary judgment issued in favor of Penske Logistics, the carrier, on the grounds that it was not the employer of the driver. This load from an automotive seat manufacturer got, I won't say double brokered, but it got moved down the chain twice. Penske Logistics got the job, brokerage arm, PTM, which gave it to a carrier, which then gave it to another carrier, and it was that carrier whose driver was involved in the jackknife accident that ended up killing somebody. So the carrier, Penske Logistics, was the move to have them found as the vicarious employer of the driver that jackknife was unsuccessful, and summary judgment was passed down in the Southern District of Texas in favor of Penske Logistics. Penske Transportation Management was tossed out of the case under the grounds that the F4A protected it. Of course, the F4A, as a protection against brokers, went away with Montgomery. So the appellate courts, the Fifth Circuit, took it up, and they did two things. First of all, this is no surprise at all. Penske Transportation Management was kind of put back in the case. Why? Because Montgomery said, you can't do this. Okay, brokers are not being protected by the safety exception or actually brokers can be pulled in under the safety exception of F4A. And then you also had another decision that reversed the summary judgment on Penske Logistics, the carrier, in which the court said yes, they can be found to be vicariously liable for the carrier down the line. They haven't taken on the responsibility of that load and then passing it down. So it was a double whammy loss for Penske in this case. And, we're going to watch it. There's going to be a lot of others. I would imagine that where a broker was protected and now it's going to get put back in, and and the litigation will go back to the federal district court. And we'll just kind of watch that.
There's so much here.
Yeah.
There's Texas, which has been sort of the epicenter of, the lupus lawsuit was litigated in Texas. Actually, the accident happened in Mississippi, but it was Dallas County. You've got Texas. It's featured. The Werner case was a Texas lawsuit. The Home Depot case that involved Werner was a Texas lawsuit. So Texas is front and center. The idea that Texas is only a business-friendly state is not being proven out in the court systems unless you get to the state Supreme Court. Feels like the state Supreme Court tends to be very pro-business, or at least tends to side on the argument that businesses' liability is mitigated, which is, I think, encouraging for businesses. But the other idea is that this law, and we were talking about this before we got on air, Julie and I were, is that the parties, there was multiple parties that were passed on. This was not even double brokered, it was quadruple brokered, I guess you could describe it. One went from a managed trans business, which is Penske's sort of core business, to their brokerage arm, then to a carrier.
Let's walk through that chain one more time, because I think it's really interesting. So it was first tendered to Penske Logistics, which is really like their asset. I mean, it's their trucks, right, as a trucking company, which is why.
Is it the trucking company or is it managed trans?
It went from them to their managed trans.
Gotcha.
So, which is why this whole vicarious liability part was so interesting, because they said that they assumed control and responsibility for the freight. So then the underlying carrier can be considered an employee, right? So it went from Penske Logistics, where it was actually tendered to PTM, which is the managed trans, their broker, then to Liberty Lane, who then brokered it to OK Trans, who was involved in the accident.
Go ahead, John.
No, I was going to say to OK Trans, yeah.
So the question is, if you're Penske, were you aware, was there awareness at Penske that this was being brokered and brokered and brokered? Or was this a failure in the chain of a carrier that was supposed to have received the load and hauled the load, double brokering, as we know that people are prone to do?
Well, based on, remember the decision by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals was a grand total of 6 pages. Okay, so there's not a lot of discussion in there, but I would imagine, based on my reading of what's in there, I think the argument of, hey, we didn't know this was going on, would probably not stand up in court too well.
Why is that?
The argument, well, because the court made the argument.
Why would you say that? Like, what makes you say that?
Because the court makes clear that when and I spoke to Mark Blubaugh of Benish, and he said this is not groundbreaking. This is an accepted part of law, that when a carrier takes on a load, as it moves down the chain, it still has responsibility. It does not wipe its hands of it. So even if it didn't know that it was getting rebrokered from what was that middle one? What lane?
Liberty Lane, yeah.
Rebrokered. from them to OK Trans. The fact that they may not have known about it, based on my thin reading of what the judge said, I don't think that's going to make any difference.
Wow, that's
And I
that's
think the other interesting differentiator here is. Sorry,
as long
go
as
ahead.
we're talking about the week, let's not forget in Texas that there was another case involving Atlas Freight this week in Texas, where the plaintiffs tried to bring them in as a shipper liability, and they were shot down. Now, that's the second time in Texas that shipper liability took a blow. The first one was, Craig, you made reference to Home Depot. There was that one, and then there was this one. So that's another
that was an
whole
air
track
freight
here.
The Atlas Air, as I understand it, John, was an air freight,
Yeah.
the air freight operations, right?
Yeah. So anyway, that was one where the trying to extend liability out did not work. There
Texas,
shipper liability.
Texas definitely, the Supreme Court has ruled multiple times, has been, like I said, they've been pro-business, you could argue. They have not had a ton of activism in terms of their allowing these jury awards if you get to appeal, which I think is encouraging, as long as the appeals court continues and the Supreme Court continues to be, have the same representation in terms of judges. I think the question is going to be what states. I mean, these issues, and you were talking about interesting point. If the broker loses, so if the load is brokered to a carrier, so they think, and that carrier elects to broker it, to your point, John, chain of custody, you may lose custody as to who the counterparty is, but you're still responsible, which I think is, it's news to me.
I wonder if one of the differentiators here is that
that's the way I read
was a carrier who received the load, not a broker. Like in the C.H. Robinson case, it was a broker, and they said that the underlying employee of the carrier was still employed by them. In this case, the vicarious liability is because they were a carrier who received responsibility of the freight. So I don't know if that distinction of them being a carrier before they gave it off to their brokerage counterpart.
The managed trans business should give them some degree of.
I don't know.
We'll get into it, Matt Leffler, and later in the show, John. Thank you so much, man. We'll be back. What is it? Tuesday is EIA Day. I know it's your
I'm on
favorite
vacation.
Day. Oh, you're on vacation.
Man,
We're not going to have our diesel report.
We'll still have it, maybe just not.
Someone to fill in the man, the myth, the legend, Mark Hazelwood. Later on in the show, he's going to talk all about oil and diesel, but also about what he's up to these days. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
The world doesn't wait, so neither do they. Wheels on the interstate, boots on the site, hands on the shipment. We build for the world out here, and we build it with the people who live it. Ideas from the field, made real by world-class R&D to keep the operation sharp, the front lines safe, and the world moving. From one cab to a global network, billions of miles, trillions of data points, every one making your operation better. And we never build it alone. Samsara, built with operators.
Once a year, the entire freight industry stops what it's doing and comes to one place, Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is F3, the Future of Freight Festival. It isn't just a conference. It's the largest festival in freight, built to pull you all the way in. The energy, the ideas, the atmosphere, and the people who move this industry forward. Over 50 speakers, 4 events across 3 days, founders, executives, innovators, and disruptors, all under one roof, all asking the same question: what comes next? On the main stage, the sharpest minds in freight take on the biggest questions in the business: the trends, the technology, and the forces shaping what's ahead. Then the clock starts. 7 minutes, no exceptions. The cutting edge of freight tech goes head-to-head, live, battling for best in show. When the time's up, the lights go out. And in between, the conversations that don't happen anywhere else. The connections that change the trajectory of your business. The relationships you'll carry long after you leave. Because when the sessions end, the festival begins. Live entertainment, unforgettable experiences, a celebration of the world of freight, and an energy you won't find at any other event in the industry. The leaders you need, the access you won't get anywhere else. This is where knowledge is shared, where deals get done, where the future of freight gets decided. F3, Future of Freight Festival, October 27th and 28th. The Signal, Chattanooga, Tennessee. We'll see you there. Register now at live.freightwaves.com.
Welcome back to FreightWaves Today. It is jobs. That's what the Sonar update's about today. Let's get into it.
For today's Sonar update, Friday, August 7th, I want to talk a little bit about the overall freight economy and, Sonar freight data and then the economy as a whole is a little bit of an economic update. There's not a lot moving in the freight data week over week. So I wanted to zoom out a little bit and look at it a little bit more holistically. And when you do that, this is one of the more interesting weeks we've had all summer because freight, manufacturing, and the labor market are all telling us a little bit of a different story. So this is one of the reasons why having real-time data is so important so that you can really watch these things as they develop and rapidly change. The Bureau of Labor and Statistics released the July jobs report this morning, showing a decline in 23,000 non-farm payrolls. So that was a bit unexpected. The consensus was that we'd be adding between 83 and 95,000 jobs, and instead it was reported that we were down 23,000. Unemployment did tick down to 4.1%, but it wasn't driven by labor force increasing or by people finding jobs. It was driven by labor force participation falling to 61.4%, which is a 5-year low. So people are leaving the workforce rather than finding jobs to bring that unemployment number down to 4.1%. Also, the May and June numbers were revised. And between those two, when you combine those revisions, those prior 2 months are 103,000 jobs weaker than were first reported. The losses in jobs month over month were relatively concentrated in a couple of areas. Local government and education was down 50,000, but that's mostly seasonal noise and really not that relevant to the freight market. However, retail trade, as well as warehousing, clubs, and general merchandise were also both down 19,000 and 21,000 respectively. And the retail number matters because those are shippers generating truckload freight. And then to round it out, transportation and warehousing employment was flat, not declining, not hiring either. So kind of what we're seeing in our current Sonar numbers. So let's talk about that, what Sonar is showing on the freight side. So our STRI, Sonar Truckload Rejection Index, is at 13.6%, which is down from that high peak in early June of 17.9%. So we have seen a little bit of a 3-week slide, but again, I feel like this is relatively seasonally normal. STVI, the Sonar Truckload Volume Index, is also declining alongside it. It's down from mid-July peak to about 11,258 currently. So it's relatively normal for those numbers to move in tandem. And as we've said all along, this is not a demand-driven tight freight cycle. It is a lack of capacity freight cycle. So capacity did loosen a bit, but again, I feel relatively normal for July and August numbers. We just saw that really high peak early in June that brought the baseline up. Spot rates are down slightly versus the 30-day average, but contract rates continue to rise. They're near their high. And as you can see in the spot to contract spread graphic, that spread is getting smaller. So while spot rates have come down a bit over the last 3 weeks, contract rates are continuing to rise. So that is happening as new mini bids have come out and been put in place, and new contracts are being put in place with contract rates rising. If we look at the country regionally, we are seeing capacity loosen in the Southeast, the Atlanta area, and in El Paso the most quickly, but we are also seeing some parts of the country remaining elevated. Green Bay stands out. So across the Midwest, tender rejections are remaining elevated and have actually gone up the past few days. So the bottom line is the freight data and the jobs data are sort of pointing in the same direction to soft demand, but I think it is relatively normal summer seasonality. And I want to put that a little bit in context with the Sonar Pricing Power Index. So that ticker is FWPPI. We also each week produce a detailed article on what is happening with that pricing power index, which gauges really who is holding sort of the balance of power and has the leverage in negotiating capacity, demand, and pricing. And we boil it down into a single weekly score on who has the leverage between shippers and those providers or carriers. So it's a great article to read each week. It can be found in the FreightWaves Market Monitor, or it can be found inside Sonar platform under research. So the current reading for the PPI this week is 72. It's down from a mid-July peak of 79, but it's still firmly in carrier favorably territory. So it's easing a bit, but it's not flipping. Capacity has loosened modestly and the spot to contract spread has narrowed. And so that's the STRI decline we were talking about, but that's being offset by contractual pricing continuing to remain resilient and begin to rise, as well as rail volumes sitting near the top of their 5-year range. So as we talked about earlier, some of the rejections and volume numbers, I wouldn't overread the rejection slide as a market flip to shippers by any means. The PPI still clearly says that carriers have the leverage. It's just softened a bit off of that really high recent number from early June. The other thing that's pointing to what I believe will lead to some increased demand in a continued tight freight market is the ISM manufacturing data. So the ISM PMI hit 55.6 in July, which is the highest since May 2022 and the 7th straight month of expansion. So new orders and backlogs both accelerated, and manufacturing added jobs for the first time in 33 months. So all of this should really create continued acceleration in the industrial activity happening at the exact same time that truckload demand is softening. So while freight demand feels like it has been weak, I believe freight demand is going to have to catch up with what the manufacturers are signaling, or shippers are really still burning through inventory rather than ordering fresh capacity, which isn't creating that demand yet. Services PMI was at 54.1, but services employment fell back into contraction. So that's another kind of cross current number that doesn't necessarily align, but I think services versus the actual industrial manufacturing is less important of a number. And then the last thing that's sort of throwing a wrinkle into this and that we're all watching is the conflict in Iran escalating and de-escalating and re-escalating. DOE diesel is up 16.8% month over month. So the conflict has flared back up. So we will see what happens there and what that continues to do regarding, spot rates, and if carriers continue to have the ability to recoup those fuel costs based on a lack of capacity and really push those rising fuel costs through in their all-in spot rates. So to really close this out, the week's freight numbers look boring on the surface, normal seasonal July and August softening, but underneath there are really three parts of the economy that are pulling in three different directions. The labor market is weakening, manufacturing is accelerating, and inflation is really refusing to cooperate and is sort of an unknown at the moment because of the war. So freight, and the PPI specifically, sits right at the intersection of all three, which is really why it's worth watching that pricing power index number and taking in all of the context of what is happening in the market and available leverage for carriers versus shippers when negotiating contracts and rates.
So Julie, obviously, a little softness, or we'll call it cooling, in the month of July and August. But I think, as we've heard for public earnings, no one is bearish. I think that's the headline, right? Do we worry about the housing? I mean, the employment market cooling. I think a lot of it is actually encouraging if you're worried about interest rates.
Right. I think the employment is cooling, but it's not cooling in transportation and warehousing. There's a little bit of pullback in some retail,
Yeah.
but it's not anything that should affect transportation specifically. I think other parts can be cooling while transportation is hot and demand is still leaving the market. And there's been nothing that's allowing, capacity is still leaving the market, and there's been nothing that's allowed capacity or anything indicating capacity is entering or will be.
Well, I think we've talked about
so.
that. John Kingston talked about that earlier, is the fact that the employment number hasn't shifted at all really since February, and then transportation employment, which I find encouraging. I think the fact that the overall employment number is cooling just a bit, tiny bit, not a big number, it's not anybody should be worried about. It's actually good from an inflation standpoint, because it will cool a lot of the threatened inflation that everyone's worried about.
Yeah, I don't know what is going to happen with that inflation in the Fed with oil and diesel prices, and
energy
with energy prices is what employment. It's kind of
interesting
a mess.
How the energy market, everyone thought it was going to crater the consumer. It's not happening. In fact, John Kingston had something he tweeted earlier today about just the number of miles driven, the amount of gasoline being consumed by AAA. They're not showing any sign that consumers are changing their consumption habits. We talked about that. Consumers spend as much as $400 a month on food, between grocery and food delivery. They're really stretched on higher oil prices or gasoline prices by $60 to $70 a month per household. They would stop having their burritos delivered at $28. They're not doing that.
Is it bad that I think that $400 number feels low?
I mean, it's all perspective, right? But if you had a choice.
Well, I think it depends on how
you had
many
a
people are in
choice
the household
between,
and all of that. But
let's say gasoline prices were really impacting you. Wouldn't you just stop getting your burritos delivered? $28 for a burrito delivery is a lot of money.
yes, I would
Some
go
people,
pick it up,
that's
or I would
okay.
eat at home.
You
I
know,
don't know if Will would stop getting his food delivered.
He does it?
He's really
It's
big
a
on that.
family discussion.
But yes, I would,
you and he need to
because
talk
I don't
about
care that much about what I eat. I just would find something in the pantry.
Yeah, I kind of like getting my food delivered. So, although not all the time, I kind of prefer it. I just feel like I want to have chain of custody of my food. I want to know what's been
They seal it up. The DoorDash food, they seal it up.
still. Chain of custody is important. We know. I don't want a double brokered. I don't want a double broker burrito. Well, speaking of double brokering and the fraud that continues to propagate this industry, there's no better person to talk about than Mark Hazelwood, who is on an absolute tear right now. Mark, let's start with really what you're up to. Last time we talked, there's a lot going on in your life. What is the latest with you, sir?
Well, first of all, Julie and Craig, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. And several things. One of the things that we've really been focused on over the last year is really working on the non-domiciled driver and what the non-domiciled driver is doing and has done to the industry really over the last 7-8 years since the ELD has come into play. But it's really expanded itself in the previous administration and really changed the dynamics of the trucking industry because of the amount of miles that these non-domiciled drivers are driving. And when you look at it, they're driving 145, 150,000 miles a year, to where a driver doing it legally and doing it by the hours of service can maybe get 92, 94, really good, maybe 96,000 miles a year. So that's kind of what we've been focused on with the administration. And the administration, I think, is doing a stellar job of looking at all of the different aspects that these non-domiciles have come in and just manipulated the industry.
So, Mark, you've got three titles. You've got your chairman of Conversion Interactive, Echo Flaps, and Assured Telematics. Can we work through each of those, exactly what each of these do for our audience
Sure.
that isn't familiar with them? So let's start
Sure.
with
Conversion
Conversion
Interactive.
Interactive.
First, Conversion Interactive is a company. We are the largest driver recruiting agency, and not just an agency. We're more technology than we are agency in today's world. And Joanne, my wife, and I own that with Kelly Walkup. And we have worked diligently to develop Agentic, which is an AI development, and really had some great success with recruiting drivers. And it's a tough market, and it has turned on a dime. It went from companies not needing drivers to where today, as you were talking about earlier, Julie, rates are definitely on the upswing and are going to continue that way as capacity leaves the market, and good capacity is there, but drivers are in high demand. So that's what we do in conversion.
And Mark, are we seeing the driver market, something we were talking about, the labor situation, is concerned about the market overcorrecting? You've been around this industry for your whole life. Do we think this industry is going to be able to hold off of its temptation to overcorrect?
I believe so. And I think for the first time, you're seeing real capacity leave the market to where, as Julie was talking earlier, you don't see capacity entering the market. Typically, when you have rate increases like what we've seen over the last, let's call it 5-6 months, you typically have, and John was talking about this too, carriers adding trucks, adding equipment. I think from a capacity standpoint and from just a driver standpoint, I think it's a little tough for the carriers to add capacity due to the limitation of drivers. I do think this, though, as you get back to where carriers will find that the return is there, they will invest in equipment and invest in drivers and invest in making sure that the supply chain is not disrupted.
So I do want to talk about your other two jobs, but while we're on this topic, I want to keep talking about capacity exiting the market, and you play a personal role and devote your time to enforcement and to, I guess, championing these causes towards pulling unsafe capacity off of our roads. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what you are doing with FMCSA and DOT and how that all plays together?
Sure. We've had a meeting with carriers and with the ATA with Secretary Duffy and Administrator Bars back in December. It was really an important meeting, but it was very constructive. And you can tell that they understand the issues, and they're having tremendous success looking at the industry. And I say this, they had to have success because the previous administration had been so bad. And actually, I think it was by design to bring so much capacity into the market. And they did so by, having the CDL mills, fast track CDLs in the schools, not actually training drivers. And it just added so much capacity. If you look, when President Trump left office in January of 20, there were about 170,000 non-domiciled CDL holders. Don't know how many of those were driving, but they were holders. When President Trump came back in January of 2025, there's 780,000 non-domiciled CDL holders. So you can see the amount of CDLs that have been issued during the previous administration. And most of those came into the marketplace, and it wasn't because the marketplace was, as both of you know, that you saw rate increases during that point in time. But why were they coming into the market? They were coming into the market because they were manipulating the ability to the miles they run, the insurance they carry, everything that they did. They were manipulating. I'm not going to use another word. I'll use manipulation, but they were manipulating the market to benefit themselves.
So speaking of the number of illegal CDLs, I mean, I think the numbers reported are that Zeffie's team's taken out more than 20,000 drivers out of service and 28,000 illegal CDLs. That's not enough to move the market and actually take capacity out of the market.
It is.
But
Like,
is it the
it's
threat
not a
of
big
the
number.
enforcement?
No, it's John Kingston, who, and Mark knows this probably painfully. He's bought enough fuel and oil in his life. It's the incremental barrel that sets the price of the oil. Like, at the end of the
then that's the
day,
question.
it's the
Is it
same
enough to
thing.
change the market? And what
It
do you think
is.
it will
I mean,
look like the rest of the year?
Look, we've reported on the fact that capacity has come out. That's the reason that this recovery is underway. It doesn't take a lot. It's the incremental. I mean, Mark, John Kingston, our oil reporter, has been reporting on commodities his whole life. He likes to say it's not the percentage, it's the incremental that sets the price of oil. I would argue that truck driver capacity is the same thing. Truck is a commodity. You disagree with that?
No, 1,000%. Every driver that comes out, and really, when you take one driver out, Julie, to your point, you're taking 1.5 out, because that driver that you're taking out, that non-domiciled, is probably running 140 to 150,000
That's a fair
miles
point.
versus running 92,000 miles. That's a major difference. And as this administration continues to focus on how do these drivers, how do these carriers, how do they manipulate the market? Well, they manipulate it by manipulating their ELD. And you look in this country, there are about 1,020 ELD providers. And it's all because we have self-certification on the ELD. This administration is going to change that, and they're going to go to a third-party certification. To put that into perspective, Canada has third-party certification, and they have been in the ELD and the certification since 2019. They have 42 providers in Canada, 1,020 versus 42. Why are there 1,020 here? Because in self-certification, it's like grading your own papers. Guess what? You're self-certified. You're now an ELD provider. And so there was a lot of demand for these ELDs, and especially for those that would allow the drivers and or the companies to manipulate those ELDs so the driver can drive more. But the problem with that is this: they're killing people. They're killing people. And you have innocent Americans on the highway, and they're driving in Florida, California, wherever, Indiana, Pennsylvania, where a state trooper was killed, and they're being killed by these illegals driving trucks that have not been trained to drive trucks. They haven't been put through certified schools, and they've been given a CDL within 2 to 3 days. And in the schooling, self-certification again. We've got to get to third-party certification on schools and on ELDs.
Well, as you point out, a lot of these ELD companies are actually based overseas. They're editing the software. We've reported numerous cases where these chameleon carrier networks happen to own the ELD devices that these chameleon operators are using. And as soon as they get shut down, they just recertify under a different name, software copy paste. It's real simple. It's a massive hole. Derek Bars has been totally on this, top cop in the industry, trying to crack down on this, Mark. What are in terms of timeline, what are you hearing?
It's going to take a while, and I don't know when they will announce that they're going to third-party certification. I would hope it's going to be sooner versus later, because I think that will wake up those that are manipulating the ELDs. So I do think that they will announce it sooner versus later. But then getting to the point to where you actually go through the certification, you have to find those that are going to certify. And so the FMCSA will have to find certification process, get through the process, and then have those that are going to be hired to do the certification. And then you have to allow the ELD providers to go through that certification. And, that's going to take a while. My guess is if we could get that done over the next 12 months, I think it would be a heroic act to get it done in 12 months. I do think this, as you announce and as you start going to certification, I think there'll be a lot of the ELD providers that have been out there allowing these drivers and companies to manipulate, I think they will leave the market because they know it is coming, and they won't spend the money, and it's going to be expensive. It's going to be expensive for me, for our company, to go through this certification. We spent millions of dollars getting certified in Canada. We were the first to be certified in Canada with our ELD. And we know we're going to spend a whole lot of money to get there, but it has to happen. It has to happen in this industry. It's got to happen. We can't have, self-certification on something as important as an ELD.
Yeah, I mean, Derek Bars and Duffy have so much work to do to clean up the travesty, the economic security and safety crisis that this trucking industry has become, which is quite, it's quite fortunate that we have an administration and a cabinet secretary that cares about the state of trucking. It's interesting when Sean Duffy was first appointed DOT secretary. So we had that major air crash up in Washington, D.C. It was the first sort of commercial crash that we'd had in over a decade.
And that was like immediately.
It was
the
immediately.
same
It was right at the
week.
end of January, I believe.
Right, yeah.
And all the attention was on that. There was a period of time on X where the Freight X folks, the trucking folks, were saying, hey, it's more of the same. Duffy doesn't really care about trucking. But then there was a lot of fast and furious come May. I mean, it has been almost daily, or certainly every couple of days where we hear Duffy talk about trucking. We've never seen a DOT secretary do that. It made it into the State of the Union address, probably the first time. Mark, do you ever remember a president talking about trucking during the State of the Union? I certainly don't.
Never. And when we had our meeting in December, early December, and we met with Secretary Duffy and Administrator Bars, and Chris Spear went with us, and we left the meeting, and he was like, that's a first. He said, I have never been in a meeting with the DOT, FMCSA, where when we left, we said, okay, these guys got it, and they're going to do something about it. And
well, they're doing a lot.
Yeah, to have this administration, we are so blessed and honored to have them, and they really care about trucking, and they care about citizens. They care about everyday citizens traveling the interstates, traveling the roads, that they can feel safe. And we've got to get the industry back to where it is a safe industry.
I agree with you, Mark, wholeheartedly. We're running out of time. Real quick question. Oil. We got to ask you about energy. You have delivered a lot of gallons to this industry. First of all, do you miss it? Do you miss being in the energy part of the industry? And what's the state of oil?
First of all, yes, I do miss it. I would be lying to tell you that I didn't, but yes, I do miss it. Here's what I see in oil is that, and it's especially diesel, and John hit on this very eloquently, but our crack spreads on diesel are $87 today. $87. A typical crack spread and a refiner margin, that's what crack spread is, refiner's margin. And you look at it and say, what is typical? What is typical? Typical is $15 to $20. $20 being really, really, really good. Okay, really good. And so 87 is a little bit more than just out the top. And so when you hear President Trump talk about the oil companies, that's what he's really talking about, and should talk more about the amount of profitability. Now, why is diesel so much more than gas? Gas is $40 on the crack spread, which is still huge. But diesel is being exported, and John talked about this, the amount of refineries that are being affected in Russia and Ukraine. And you got to realize we're at 20% consumption on diesel fuel in the United States, 80% gasoline. When you look at Europe, Europe is about 50 to 55% diesel versus gasoline. So it's a heavy diesel distillate consumer. And so that's where the diesel is going. We're exporting now about 2 million barrels a day, and it's pretty much all going to Northern Europe. And so that's what's kind of keeping the price high. I do think, and I'm a little bit bigger proponent of this, that as this conflict ends, and don't ask me when it's going to end because I have no idea, but at some point in time it will. We're producing about 14 million barrels a day, probably by next spring will be in the 16 million barrel range. And I think you're going to see crude in a range somewhere between low side of 62 and maybe even in the high 50s as it was before it got there. But the demand is really strong, as we know, both gas and diesel. The demand is strong. So when you look at this crack spread, it has got to come down. Do I think it's going to be $20 in the next 6 months? No, but I think it will be under 40. So I think you're going to have some retraction of diesel pricing, especially with the conflict. And as John mentioned, you've never seen anything. The traders react when there's good news, or you think that this conflict is going to end. You see an immediate reaction and a discount of maybe 20% in the price of crude oil. And I think you're going to see that really happen when the conflict ends. You'll get back to where pricing was before the conflict, which is in that low 60 range to mid 60 range.
So, Mark, we're going to have to go. Love having you on, man. It's good to see you. You look great. We're going to have you in Chattanooga. Come to Chattanooga for F3. We'll be friendly here. I promise.
I'm going to you.
Right.
I just told Asa, I said, we need to go.
You got to come down to Chattanooga. Now, you're in Nashville, right?
Nashville, yes, sir.
Yeah, so you left Knoxville. So, well, good to see you, Mark. Man, we have so much to talk about. We could unpack an entire hour of Mark Hazelwood.
So much content today.
He is an institution.
All right, clarifying on my incremental capacity.
Yeah.
I think my point was that those reported numbers I don't think are accurate of the amount of capacity that's actually left, right? Those are reported out of service. I think there's a ton of that aren't out of service who have stopped driving due to threat of the issue. And also because right now they probably, while there is freight and not enough capacity, they're not getting freight from the brokers or the people they could before.
The crackdown that's happening, I mean, these lawsuits and, the Penske lawsuit, which we'll get into.
The numbers don't sound like that much, but it is a massive impact.
John Kingston, who has taught me so much about commodity markets, has always argued that people get caught up in the percentage when it's really the incremental. So we're going to get into that. We'll be right back after these messages. Stay with us.
The drivers, dispatchers, mechanics, and crews who keep the world moving deserve tools that work as hard as they do. That's what Samsara builds, technology for safer, more efficient operations, made with the people who do the work. Samsara, built with operators for operators. Learn more at samsara.com.
The world doesn't wait, so neither do they. Wheels on the interstate, boots on the site, hands on the shipment. We build for the world out here, and we build it with the people who live it. Ideas from the field, made real by world-class R&D to keep the operation sharp, the front lines safe, and the world moving. From one cab to a global network. Billions of miles, trillions of data points, every one making your operation better. And we never build it alone. Samsara, built with operators.
Once a year, the entire freight industry stops what it's doing and comes to one place, Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is F3, the Future of Freight Festival. It isn't just a conference. It's the largest festival in freight, built to pull you all the way in. The energy, the ideas, the atmosphere, and the people who move this industry forward. Over 50 speakers, 4 events across 3 days, founders, executives, innovators, and disruptors, all under one roof, all asking the same question: what comes next? On the main stage, the sharpest minds in freight take on the biggest questions in the business, the trends, the technology, and the forces shaping what's ahead. Then the clock starts, 7 minutes, no exceptions. The cutting edge of freight tech goes head-to-head, live, battling for best in show. When the time's up, the lights go out. And in between, the conversations that don't happen anywhere else. The connections that change the trajectory of your business. The relationships you'll carry long after you leave. Because when the sessions end, the festival begins. Live entertainment, unforgettable experiences, a celebration of the world of freight, and an energy you won't find at any other event in the industry. The leaders you need, the access you won't get anywhere else. This is where knowledge is shared, where deals get done, where the future of freight gets decided. F3, Future of Freight Festival,
right?
October
Is it we going to
27th
David or are we
and
going to
28th.
Fritz?
The Signal, Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Who are we going
We'll
to?
see you there. Register
David?
now at live.freightwaves.com.
Welcome back to FreightWaves Today. We're going to get into the whole conversation. We've covered nonstop here is fraud and risk management. And the person to tell us all about how to mitigate fraud, they've rolled out a brand new paper-thin sticker. Julie and I got the chance to see it. Is Samsara's own David Gall. He's a vice president of product and engineering for connected equipment at Samsara. Welcome, David. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, tell us about this sticker. What exactly is it? What does it do? And why is it so cool? Because it's so small.
Yeah. Thanks again for having me. So the sticker is exactly as described. It's a sticker. It's right here. It's paper thin, flexible. And what this is a single use cargo tracker for shipment. So it provides real-time shipment visibility through the Samsara network on any piece of freight or cargo, so that customers can see exactly where their freight is at any given time and shift the game from being reactive on exceptions to being proactive and delivering better service.
So what is I was shocked that you could get a battery. I believe it's 45 days is what Julie and I saw. What exactly enables you to do that? It just feels like, I don't know, but I know battery technology's come a long way, but 45 days in this tiny little thing, how is that able to hold such a charge?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So we describe it as a sticker. Inside of the sticker is something very special. So there is exactly that. There's a battery, there's a Bluetooth chip, so it's a little radio, there's an antenna, and there's a bunch of code that talks to what we call the Samsara network. So that's millions of trucks and trailers and buses and bulldozers that are out in the world of physical operations. So the way the sticker works is it chirps out a little hello world signal, and all those millions of pieces of moving equipment and phones and warehouse scanners are listening for that hello. So you asked kind of about the battery. There is some pretty cool battery technology in this. This will last 45 days, so it gives shipment visibility for roughly 6 weeks once activated. And it's been a pretty game-changing product for our customers so far, so we're happy with it.
Can you talk to us about some of the use cases, maybe some unexpected use cases? I imagine I can think of a ton, but obviously shipping and packaging as well as like actually tracking freight. But can you talk us through some of those examples?
Yeah, certainly. So, in the world of physical operations, we think about shipments, tan boxes. That's kind of, I think, what pops into most people's heads, pallets and whatnot. We've actually seen a lot of other interesting use cases, other forms of shipment. So think about maybe chemicals going to a construction site, or even copper wire going to a building infrastructure project. So there's all sorts of shipments out there. We've seen biological samples. We've seen of course, GPUs and cabling going to infrastructure build out. I think what's really interesting is the whole world of physical operations, in some sense, really exists for shipments. And so we're just seeing all kinds of those out there.
So David, so on the Samsara network that you guys have across all these devices, if the label, so let's say that the package is stolen and this label exists, even if it's off your proprietary network, not Samsara's network, but let's say that I'm a company that's got a small fleet of 100 trucks. Even if that box moves out of that truck network and sees another device out there that's owned by Samsara, will it ping? Will it use those transmission to tell us where it's at?
Yeah, you got it exactly right. So the way this works is that label chirps out a hello world, and all those millions of vehicles and trucks and trailers, they're all actively listening for all labels. So it doesn't matter if it's your truck that's listening for it or somebody else's. If that Samsara network picks up the signal from this label, then we will hear about it, know exactly where it is. I think the interesting thing is the way this all works is Bluetooth, which is maybe surprising for a lot of folks. Shipping labels and tracking shipments is not necessarily a new concept in the industry, but if you think about the underlying technology, most folks have either taken a look at RFID, or on the other end of the spectrum, cellular and GPS-based solutions. Both are viable, but both have some key challenges, which the Bluetooth network that Samsara has really addresses. So in the case of RFID, people are attracted to it because of the low tag price, which is great, but there's a significant capital investment required for the readers. And then kind of to your point, as soon as that RFID label leaves the infrastructure, the first party infrastructure, even by a few meters, there's no more visibility. So that's really challenging for a lot of our customers. On the other end of the spectrum, you have LTE and GPS, which is pretty ubiquitous. Cell service is kind of everywhere at this point, but it's really expensive. And so what the Bluetooth technology enables us to do is find a really interesting sweet spot in the middle where we can have a low cost tag, no capital infrastructure required to deploy because of that Samsara network, because anybody's truck will pick it up. And it means that you get visibility everywhere. So that's really the secret ingredient to making all this work.
So I'm familiar with the Apple tags. I think most consumers are. That's sort of probably the most classic example of tag technology. This is, very small is the first thing. Is there any, if I were to describe this to a layperson and they obviously knew the tags, what is the big difference between that and a typical Apple tag in terms of what this actually does versus a tag?
Yeah. So, I think there's a few things. The first is that this is disposable. So this is really purpose built for one-way visibility, or one-way shipments. We have a series of asset tracking products. They're sort of durable ones that, they're kind of hard goods that customers are tracking pieces of construction equipment, let's say or tools. But these last 6 years in the field. And what happened was we deployed these to our customers and they said, this is great. What about one-way use cases where we don't want to deal with the reverse logistics? So, we have heard, of course, of consumers putting air tags in shipments and whatnot, but that's gone. Once you ship that out, you're not getting that air tag back. Or if you try to get it back, it's really expensive to do so. So the key difference here is that this is disposable and the network that's listening for it is exactly in the right place at the right time. In other words, it's on the roads and highways, it's at the job site, it's in the residential area. So the coverage is really remarkable.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then just show the size of it. And one of the things, David, I'd like to talk about is, so if you're in a container ship and you've got, or even in a truck and you've got the stuff buried inside of a box, inside of a trailer, what is the range that it needs to be near a sensor?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And this is the surprising part of it. And this is sort of why I said the secret sauce is the Samsara network, is that we are actually putting this on shipments of our own, oftentimes carried by carriers are not necessarily Samsara customers. And it's exactly the setup you said. It's on a pallet in the back of a truck. That Bluetooth is chirping through all the cargo that's in that truck, through the metal walls of that box truck, let's say, and getting picked up by another vehicle on the other side of the highway. So, in open air, the range is a couple hundred feet, but the thing that really makes this possible is the density of the Samsara network. It's the fact that Samsara footprint is really everywhere in this ecosystem.
That's very cool. You know what would be cool?
If I could put one on my kids.
I was thinking,
it was 45 days.
David, has anyone put these on their children?
Funny enough, we had a family day a few weeks ago at our office, and one of the staff engineers that helped build this, I saw a photo of him putting it on his child. So
when we went to
I would
Disney,
put it inside their shoe.
Yes,
or
when
like
we went to
in their
Disney,
backpack.
we took the Apple tags because that was, like you don't know, but those things are big. So put them on the in their socks or something. Like, well, you know what we should do, David? We should have you come to F3. And we should give tags to our attendees, and we create a scavenger hunt of stuff, and maybe turn this into a game with the tags. Are you in?
Let's do it. I'm in. Let's do it.
I think it would be a really cool demo of the tech, and you could have maybe it's like, we'll come up with a game. We need to come up with our event team to design this really cool experience. But I just think it's so remarkable that we've reached the point where this sort of nanotechnology has a transmitter as well as a battery that lasts that long.
I think the disposable nature of it is what's
incredible. How much does one of these cost, David?
So this is all enterprise-based pricing with Samsara, so the volume discounting and everything. But basically, in volumes, people should be expecting to look at roughly single-digit dollar pricing for shipment. And the cool thing is that this product's brand new, so we expect that with time, the technology is going to scale, and we can get these down to be even cheaper. We think long-term, in the future, 5-10 years out, this should be really ubiquitous. We should be able to get cost to really scale and be in a pretty exciting place.
And the thieves are unlikely to know, or at least recognize. I mean, it looks just like a normal tag, right?
Like a normal.
That's right. It looks like just a normal sticker. And we've seen some pretty interesting, use cases with our customers where they're maybe putting the sticker on the inside of cargo, for example, to make it even more discreet, or underneath a shipping label, or even printing the shipping label on top of it. So it's been pretty cool.
Porch pirates, beware! You're on notice.
Yeah, yeah. And I just love
Samsara and Sam, the owl, is coming towards you. We gotta get Sam to sit right here. I think he would be an awesome co-host.
Sam wants Craig wants an actual owl. Like he wants a physical owl that he's got.
It's on its way. So it's being I need a tracking device to figure out where it's at.
Yeah,
So.
put the label on it.
Well, David, thank you so much. Do you remember, Julie, the Zach Morris phone? Do you remember the old days? The big, thick brick phone that he had? Like, that was
Yeah, and I
where we
remember my
come.
grandmother also had one in her car that like was like in a zip
the
up
bag
thing.
phone. Do you remember the bag phone?
Yes.
Did you ever
it
see
was
one
a
of
bag
those?
phone. Exactly.
Yeah, my dad had a bag phone. It's like, so we come so far away.
Here we
Well,
have-
speaking of coming a long way, let's talk about Saia and their national network build out. We have the CEO of Saia coming to us from Atlanta, right up the street from Chattanooga. Fritz Holzgrefe. Welcome, Fritz. Welcome to FreightWaves Today. How are you?
Hey, great to be here. Doing well.
Well, thank you so much. Congratulations. You guys are continuing to do impressive stuff at Saia. You built out a pretty substantial network, took advantage of some consolidation that's happening in LTL. Feels like right time to do that with everything that's happening in the freight market. What are you guys seeing right now?
You know, I think the market feels pretty good. It's got room to grow from here. I think that the biggest takeaway that I see as we talk to customers is that there are a certain level of kind of consistency. People have sort of understand the markets in which we operate. They understand kind of what the challenges there might be, but most importantly, they know the rules of engagement right now. So I think that allows folks to kind of invest in their business, kind of grow their business, work on developing their supply chain. And so I think it's an interesting time. And, you know, we've seen pretty good growth as we've, built out our national network.
What are shippers seeing right now in terms of sort of, LTL is always a little bit slower to recover than the truckload market. It's sort of that second part of the cycle. What are shippers experiencing right now? Earlier this year, there was a lot of, I wouldn't call it denialism, but sort of a state of belief or suspended belief among shippers. The market was turning. How are shippers reacting to the market right now?
You know, it's interesting. We poll our customers every quarter and just kind of get a feel for sense of what they think's going on and how they feel about their business or what their next steps are. And what's interesting is when you look at the poll that we took back at the end of the first quarter, people were focused on, hey, the second half is going to be better. There was an optimism around that. And what's interesting is that hasn't really changed after the second quarter. So we did our survey here a few weeks ago. And I think that's important for the business. Customers are comfortable with where they are. And now they're looking to, all right, what LTL provider can I grow with and who can I partner with to kind of meet their expectations in the second half. So I think that there's a consistency it's there. So I think that's positive, and we're ready to see that growth.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly have built out your network. You guys have added a brand new expansion in terminals. Talk a little bit about what the network build out has been like and what was the purpose of that?
Well, the network build out, and it's been a many-year process. So if you've been following us, our first real sort of expansion was started in 2017. The company's 102 years old at this point, but by the time 2017 had come, we'd been through a period of kind of challenges. In the 2010 period, we built through acquisition, kind of got the business stabilized through 2017, and it started in earnest expanding into the Northeast, and we've kind of kept going. And as the generational real estate opportunity came about as one of our competitors exited the business a few years ago, that's helped us accelerate that process. Now, what's been critical to it, and we've opened 70 of these facilities since 2017, what you learn in that is the customer expects to have the exact same service everywhere we do business with them. And that's critically important. So for us, the biggest challenge in an organic expansion like that is you got to build the team, develop those expectations right away that leans into that historic Saia culture, which is a focus on the customer. And that's been our focus. So when you go through an organic expansion like that, it's really, really important that a new customer in Trenton, New Jersey has the exact same experience with Saia that they do in Dallas or one of the established markets that we've been in. So the success to date, and I think you see that in our volume numbers, and if we've been able to grow through this, is that customers say, look, hey, I'm getting the same service in across this national network now. And what's important about that is that gives us some new opportunities for customers. Customers are coming to us and say, oh, fantastic. You can now get my freight from Trenton, New Jersey to Texas markets in 3 days. That's significant. We couldn't do that historically. Now we can. Now we're providing those solutions to customers. So it's an exciting time for the company, and the growth, the organic growth, is really built around a great team and some great assets that we've accumulated over the last number of years.
It's impressive to watch. I love history. Julie knows how much of a history nerd I am. Just the history of Saia, the Jevic business, the connection to Yallo, rest in peace. So it's been fun to watch what you guys really cook over the last couple of years as you built out this network and really have grown the business.
Yeah, it's been exciting. I think what's really compelling to me is when you see what we can do for a customer now, and that there were times in Saia's history where we wanted to do a better job and we couldn't quite get it done, and now we feel like we're more and more in a position that we can do that, and that for our team that's focused on the customer, when you've got the ability to continue to match those customer needs, that's pretty exciting for us.
So I had the pleasure of speaking with Brad Hadley, your VP of National Accounts, last week on the show, and we talked a little bit about general market health and about general rate increases. So I believe that in July, you guys did push out your general rate increase. How was that received, and what are you hearing from shippers?
Listen, I think we all are in a spot where people don't like rate increases. People don't like inflationary cost increases. We understand that. I mean, I think nobody is excited about it. You're in a better position to go recover those inflationary costs and to put those rate increases in when you're doing a great job. First and foremost, you don't get the opportunity to go to a customer and say, hey, look, we need to put a general rate increase in, and this is why we're dealing with inflationary costs across our P&L. Customer has got plenty of problems. They don't need their LTL partner to be a problem. And if you come in and say, look, this is the service we've been providing, and you're creating a lot of value for the customer, and you only get a chance to get those rate increases when you're providing value to the customer. And I think we are. So listen, I don't know that people were excited about that, but I think they also would say that, hey, this is the best they've ever seen from Saia, and that feels like a better investment than for them. So, so far as what the impact has been, is that it's been as we kind of expected, to be quite honest with you. Customers are like, you're doing a great job. We don't like the inflationary nature of what you're having to do, but at the same time, we understand.
Well, shippers need to pay out. I mean, they've enjoyed soft markets for the last couple of years. Capacity is consolidating. We've seen the economic challenges in this industry. I mean, cargo theft requires substantial investments in safety. These are important facts. Shippers have enjoyed it too soft, too long, where they've had an enormous amount of pricing power. This is changing.
Yeah, and I think speaking of investing in your company, your team, and the service that you can provide to your customers, you guys have rolled out 2 wage increases. And so can you talk a little bit about that and how you're balancing that with margin pressure?
Yeah, listen, I'll tell people, anybody to listen, I think we've got the best team in the business. We've got to invest behind that team. A year ago, if we had this conversation, I felt like the market, the business, we had just gone through a really tough first quarter, a so-so second quarter, fair amount of uncertainty in the market. We have always been very, very focused on, listen, we're not going to head out over our skis. We got to be in a position that we pay as we go. So we delayed a wage increase a year ago to the 1st of October. When we felt better about the business, we were in a position to put that wage increase in October. We did. And then we got back on our normal schedule here the 1st of July. And that's important, right? Because company's doing well. But the only reason why the company's doing well is we got that great team we got to invest behind. So we're going to do it. We did it in a very pragmatic way. Our team understands that. They feel good about it. And now we're in a position that we're continuing to provide great service. So that's part of the inflationary cost in the business. And as Craig pointed out, this is an inflationary business that everybody's got to deal with. And we got to continue to focus on recovering, getting a return on the significant capital we've deployed in the business and the heck of a team we've assembled to get the job done for our customers every day.
I mean, I think the market conditions are enabling, shippers they've gotten the memo. They now realize that they have to pay up, they have to pay up for service. And right now, if I'm a shipper, I'm thinking about how do I protect the service providers that I depend on. I mean, that feels like in this market, it is critical. Everybody's fighting the same battle. Labor is a challenge, but also the fact that all of the LTL providers and now truckload are having to operate far more rationally than they have in the past because the market has consolidated and has enabled the kind of environment that has enabled you guys to achieve a really great OR, 86. But that is actually understating how well you're performing in some of your existing legacy facilities.
Yeah, it is. Listen, we're not anywhere where we think we need to be in terms of a company and kind of what the returns we should generate in this business. The potential we feel like of the facilities, particularly the last 40 or so that we have opened, and those date back to sort of 2023. Those are not where we think they can be from a profitability perspective, and even from a service perspective, in terms of making sure that we've got the appropriate densities in those markets that we can drive the efficiencies that are needed for our customer set. So we're early innings of tapping the full potential of this business. It is. That's why I'm particularly excited about where we are. I mean, I think people, they compare Saia to maybe some of the other national carriers, and one of the things that I think is important to note is that over the last since 23, we have opened close to 40 facilities, new locations, new people, new teams, new markets for us. And at the same time, we've replaced or relocated another 30 or so facilities. I don't think anybody else has done that. And what's important that our customers, and ideally success for us, and how you measure success of a new facility, do you get business? That's how customers vote. Sometimes they fill out surveys, they respond to surveys, but they vote when somebody's doing a good job for them.
Follow the money, Fritz. You know about that.
Growth.
So you served as CFO. You're now running the business. Yep. I got to ask, what's the biggest sort of aha moment going from the finance? I give my CFO a hard time because it's always easy to put the numbers together and make sure that things are running. But when you're in the seat, a lot of other decisions. What's been the biggest change in how you viewed the business when you moved into CEO?
I always felt like I was a pretty good operating CFO, meaning that I was close to the business, being part of the results, driving the value in the organization. Good CFO does that. Our CFO now, Matt Bate, does a great job with it. But one of the things you don't know when you're in that CFO seat and you move into the CEO seat, there's this, I don't know how to describe it, but there's just stuff you don't know about. It could be as simple of, well, there's nobody else I can ask, or there is there's certain things. Wow, I didn't really know that I was going to have to deal with that, or, geez, my phone really is on all the time, and that's okay. That's part of it. I think the thing that's really exciting about it, though, is you can see how it all comes together, and see how a team really gels together, and you see that success. That's the part I most enjoy, and I don't think you have that appreciation when you're in that CFO chair, when you see when you've got a great sales team fitting together the great ops team, delivering a great product, and it's all profitable and you're getting a good return, that you have that appreciation when you sit in my chair, and that's a great place to be, to understand the business. You don't necessarily see it all in that CFO chair.
Well, some of our best trucking is a very financially intensive, and we're talking pennies. Every penny matters in this business.
Yep.
Understanding unit economics and understanding cost is so important and critical. And look, some of the best operators in the entire business have a finance background. I mean, some of the legends of the space bring the finance office into the CEO office. And I think that's significant improvements that you guys have made operationally is a testament to the financial discipline, the understanding of the cost, and the willingness to make those investments. When you're deciding to add a new terminal, I imagine there's a pretty rigorous process for modeling that, operationalize it. What's the formula there in terms of deciding, hey, we're going to expand this terminal?
Candidly, one of the things that we have learned from this process over time is that, at the beginning, it was a process. The first facility in our expansion, I think we've opened a facility in 2015. And one of the things that we started with there is, where could we find the most economically viable property, where the build costs are low, maybe near a highway, that sort of thing. Yeah, that's a way you can do it. The way we have really focused since that time, which was very very, very cost driven. We've evolved that to be very market driven. So for us, when we look at a facility, it's all about what the addressable market is near that facility. What customers can we tap? Because the reality of it is when we deploy capital in the business and get close to the customer like that, that's creating value for the customer. And that's where the analytics start there. Now, certainly we care about the build cost, we care about timing of that, how do we deploy the capital behind it? But the fundamentals will always start, and I think you've got to have the business geared this way, starts with what does the customer need? You know, we had a facility that we added in the Dallas Metroplex. It was our 4th facility. And before we put that facility in there, the team, we got together, looked at it and I said, there's no way we need another facility in Dallas Metroplex. And, you know, we've got great market share. We're doing all the things. The data came back and said, look, this particular facility was within X proximity to customers. Customers will value this. Like, okay, now we're talking. So the model in that case was wholly predicated on what does the customer need? Where does this asset need to be deployed? And that's kind of how we got to the place. So the model when we look at adding a facility is really kind of that sort of top-down focus, meaning start with the customer and where's the value there? And then you build the team behind it. And the team that you bring in behind to develop that, they have to understand the reason why that facility is there is to serve the customers that are there. And that is kind of that's our formula.
And you imagine you're getting the benefit. I mean, DFW, I've lived DFW, I'm part Texan in terms of my residency. The DFW Metroplex is just massively growing so fast. I mean, and I imagine that you guys are benefiting greatly from that. Atlanta is as well. Atlanta and Dallas
Atlanta
should
great.
be sister cities. They're so much alike.
Yeah, so part of our growth story, for the long, we under market share in Atlanta, we added 2 facilities following the principles I just described. And now we've doubled the market share in this market in the period of about 5 years. And all about proximity to the customer and making sure people understand we're in business to take care of the customer's business.
Amazing. Well, Fritz, really appreciate your time. Before you go, I got to ask, Notre Dame going to have a good team this year?
I'm a homer. We're going to have a great team. Marcus Freeman is fantastic.
Well, fantastic. Well, best of
We
luck.
just got to make sure we beat Wisconsin.
It's
Oh, come on. I knew that's exactly where that was going to go. Badger here, you know.
You know, but he's an SEC, I am in Chattanooga too, diehard SEC country. I can't get around it, can't get away from it. So, and he's like an outsider, a Notre Dame guy in Atlanta, Baylor Bear, and you know, we're all outsiders here.
Yeah, we're all mixed up now.
We're rooting against the SEC, Fritz. Appreciate you coming on.
That's right. The world's a better place.
That's it. Coming up, we're talking to another Big Ten guy. Well, Notre Dame's not Big Ten. I don't even know. They're independent.
They're whatever they decide they want to be that year. Yeah, I don't know how to say it. Yeah.
Chameleon football team. We're going to talk to a Michigan State Sparty coming up. This is a favorite.
I'm a little sad I won't be here to talk about his shirt.
If you want to stay,
shirt?
Do you want to talk to Leffler?
I want to talk to him about his shirt. The decision he made today. Yeah.
All right, we're going to get into it right after these messages. Stay with us.
If you own or lease trailers, you may have a coverage gap you don't even realize exists. Centerline offers customized trailer insurance solutions for freight brokers and transportation companies, including liability and physical damage protection, with limits up to $1 million. With flexible pricing, customizable coverage options, and a dedicated claims team, Centerline delivers protection built specifically for the transportation industry. Visit centerlinepc.com to learn more.
You ever see yourself short on trailers right when demand picks up? Our friends at Premier Trailer Leasing can help you stay ready. With more than 70,000 trailers and over 40,000, trailers with 40 locations nationwide, Premier gives businesses flexible access to dry vans, reefers, flatbeds, and chassis when plans change. They're known for transparent pricing, quality equipment, and 24/7 in-house road care support. So you can get more than just trailers. You can get a partner that helps with your operation and keeping it moving. Visit them right now at premiertrailerleasing.com to get set up before your next big search.
The world doesn't wait, so neither do they. Wheels on the interstate, boots on the site. hands on the shipment. We build for the world out here, and we build it with the people who live it. Ideas from the field, made real by world-class R&D to keep the operation sharp, the front lines safe, and the world moving. From one cab to a global network, billions of miles, trillions of data points, every one making your operation better. And we never build it alone. Samsara, built with operators.
What's the masterclass all about? Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. If you're a driver, you're an owner-operator, you're a fleet owner, whether you're in compliance services, dispatcher, no matter what it is, masterclass is for you. Every 2 weeks, you're going to sit down with me and we're going to go over certain business topics that are related specifically to your small trucking company operations. We're going to help you with everything from compliance to how to negotiate better on the spot board, how to find direct freight, and everything in between. This is the reason why you don't want to miss out on Masterclass. It's about an hour to an hour and a half, and then on top of that, you'll have the library to you so that way you can always research and reflect back onto it. Don't miss out this opportunity. This is built specifically for you. I'm excited and I hope to see you in class.
It's your favorite part of the week. You've been clamoring for it all week. It is the one and only Matt Leffler. It's Freight Expectations. Julie's going to join me. She's like, if Matt Leffler's coming on, do you mind if I sit? I said, heck yeah. Like, this is my favorite part of the week. You know why it's so easy, Matt? Because you're such a high energy guy. But first of all, what is going on? Are you in Hawaii? Are you coming in remote?
I'm channeling my inner Sal Mercogliano. What's going on in shipping and what's going on here? I gotta be fashionable. Summer's almost over, guys.
I like it. It is
He
so
saw that in his
sad.
closet and he thought, oh
Your
gosh,
kids
when
went
I
to
get through
school, right?
August, I'm not able to wear this shirt anymore for a while, so I've got to put it on today.
Didn't you put your kids in school yesterday?
My kids started school yesterday, yeah.
Wow, it's crazy. Mine
Summer's
are
over.
about to go back. And my wife is so happy about that.
I got 2 more weeks. I got some time.
Illinois. By the way, Matt, it's happening. Chicago's coming. We are.
I am so
FreightWaves
excited.
TV is going to be coming. We have a new event. I posted this picture on X, but it's a new event center in Chicago. We're going to be broadcasting live starting in January, a morning show dedicated to the floor. What do you think about that, Matt?
I think the people are already lining up to check it out.
They're clamoring.
There's no doubt there's an audience. They're clamoring. They're everywhere. They're clamoring for this, and they deserve it. They do. This is a great favor you're doing to the city of big shoulders, my friend.
I know. I
Where
got to
is-
protect the city from all the people that keep leaving. Can't hold on to people. Climate's tough up there.
Where is the location? Can you say
It's
where
on Michigan
is-
Avenue. And it's right on Michigan Avenue.
Chicago's
And
my
it is a beautiful, gorgeous facility that happens to be able to host about 120 people for an event. We're also going to be broadcasting there. And we're going to do live in front of a live studio audience, which would be great.
So fun.
I am excited. I'm excited.
So more to come on that. But let's talk about all of the craziness that is the legal situation, Matt. What is on your radar this week? Or
Man,
should
there's
say,
so many
What is on the
things to get.
sonar this week? You like that? You did. That was like that was not a fake laugh either by Julie. I had no fake
Proud of
laughs.
that fun, yeah.
She actually enjoyed
Well,
that.
I'm glad that Julie's part of the Big Ten. I mean, there's at least 75, 80 teams part of the Big Ten now, so this is wonderful. No, I mean, we got C.H. Robinson's official statement following the Lipia Lupus Superior case, and a lot of what we talked about early on, just last week, Craig, is actually comes to be the truth. So a lot of media had reported that C.H. Robinson had talked with the driver directly, and that was part of this idea of, are you controlling this driver? Is this driver actually your employee. And for their own statement, they very clearly say they never communicated directly with that driver. They only went through the dispatcher. And so this helps build the case of what this appeal is going to look like. We're still in the fog of war, still a lot of documents to go through. But ultimately, when we get the appeal that goes to the appellate courts in Texas, we'll have a clearer understanding of what the record supports. But this case, this Lupus Superior case, has captured the imagination of brokers and shippers and anybody who hires independent contractors. So as I look at this today and I look at the statement put out by CH, it clearly shows that they did not exercise the kind of control that I would think would make somebody a borrowed employee. Time will tell, appeals will follow, but this is a $604 million verdict that is likely going to be in the courts for many years to come.
Well,
Matt, is it true? Did they actually also, once the dispatcher contacted CH and said the driver was not feeling well, is it true that they also rescheduled the load? They pushed it back?
Yes, so per their statement, they said they rescheduled the load, picking up 4 days later. So CH did what you would imagine they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And ultimately, this driver continued on. We don't know why he failed to stop, but we do know the result was the death of a lot of people, which is, again, a tragic thing to happen. But it shows that CH used what I would imagine to be reasonable care in this situation. Again, like, it's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of money's being exchanged. But ultimately, I think to your point, CH did what they thought they had to do. They heard that their driver had stopped. They reschedule for another driver, and then they find out, oh my gosh, something horrifying has happened, and now you have this crazy verdict in Texas.
So they're very defensible. I mean, it looks like CH, facts are on their side. Is that not the case?
I think so. I mean, every broker of any big scale has dealt with these vicarious liability claims. And I'm going to give you a little bit of Latin today because I love Latin and you deserve a little bit of Latin. Respondeat superior is this idea that the master will answer. So if you're an agent, you are an employee of somebody and you're doing your job and you cause damages, your employer is going to be on the hook, generally speaking. So when you have an independent contractor, they control what they do. They control how fast they go. They might control what uniforms they wear, what technology they use, who owns and maintains the asset. That's the independent contractor. Because this case had to deal with vicarious liability, they were saying that this driver was borrowed. And again, I don't have based on CH's statement, I'm assuming they're not lying when they say this, they did not exercise the kind of control that would make somebody a borrowed employee or an employee at all. So my hope is, like anything, trial courts make mistakes. That happens all the time. The next phase is appeals. But like the Werner Enterprises case we've been covering for a long time, it's going to be many, many years. So whatever happens at the appellate court doesn't matter because it's going to be appealed to the Texas Supreme Court. And that's where we'll have a final decision. And that could be...
Matt, I don't understand the whole civil appeals process as well as you do. So either party that disagrees with the judgment can appeal, right? So is that right?
Yes, that's right. So even if you win, you can appeal. And that's what C.H. Robinson did famously in the Montgomery case. They won at the Seventh Circuit, and they still asked the Supreme Court to take the case up. Whereas just years before, Global Trans had a win in the Seventh Circuit, and they asked SCOTUS not to take it. So in this case, clearly...
Stop there. Why would C.H. Robinson, if they won the Montgomery case, want to go to the Supreme Court? Were they hoping to codify this into law? Were they overly confident? I mean, it feels like a massive mistake now in retrospect. Yes. Or was it the defendant or the plaintiffs that actually took it to the Supreme Court?
So the plaintiffs actually appealed, but C.H. Robinson also requested SCOTUS to jump into that case. And that is a very good question.
After the plaintiffs appealed?
Yes, so they both appealed simultaneously.
Okay,
so the plaintiff appealed, and the C.H. Robinson was like, "Yeah, we want this to be taken." What freight brokers need right now is consistency.
Real quick, was that a mistake by C.H. Robinson? No. Should they have pushed back?
It was going to be appealed either way, right? At that point, because
it was going to be appealed. Now, the question before SCOTUS in that moment was, do you want to reconcile the federal split among the circuits? And C.H. Robinson has been living with circuits that have held brokers liable for negligent selection for many, many years. So they already understand the liability that could happen. But in their mind, and I was dead wrong on this. So I'm going to be very clear. You had the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the FMCSA, the Department of Transportation, and the Department of Justice, all on the side of C.H. Robinson, all saying we believe that brokers should not be held liable for negligent selection. So just looking at the numbers, it made sense that C.H. would probably win. Now, they didn't. It was unanimous. They lost. But what the brokers need now more than ever is consistency across this nation. And so even if you lose the appeal and you go to the SCOTUS and you lose it up there, at least now you have a level playing field where every circuit will essentially be using the same sorts of law. And that's what brokers need. Now, as we look after Montgomery, we have no idea. We have no idea what is a safe motor carrier. We have no idea what's a reasonable vetting process. Tons of people have things they want to put forward and say, here's the pathway. But the only way you get unanimity is through legislation or a whole bunch of litigation that gets appealed eventually to the Supreme Court. So C.H. Robinson, maybe they might look back and say, man, it would have been nice not to do this. But that fight was going to happen at the Supreme Court. It was going to happen, and C.H. wanted to be in the driver's seat. Now, even though they didn't end up succeeding, they did take the onus of saying, we're going to risk it and try to get a final verdict at the Supreme Court level. That's why I would say they were right to appeal it, but maybe some people would say, hey, you kind of rolled the dice and you lost there, buddy. Maybe better luck next time.
Yeah, look, I think it's interesting. I've talked to people that were involved in the case in terms of the lupus. We're talking specifically lupus, not Montgomery, but lupus is sort of the case that is now of record. It's putting this massive perspective on the overall brokerage industry. RXO had good earnings, but they, I think there's this sort of like the shadow, and Matt, as you point out, it's going to take years. I mean, we covered a case earlier on the show with John Kingston. It's a 2018 case with Penske. And we're talking about, this is something I don't think many people who, obviously you're much closer to the legal situation, you and I talked about it. Some of the vitriol that we received a couple of months ago when we were talking about Montgomery, there were people that were like, hey, I'm just going to get insurance. This isn't a problem. I haven't done anything wrong. And they don't realize that the moment the Montgomery decision happened, old cases, I mean, we're talking about a case that's 8 years old, went right back into the court systems. It was amended so that Penske can be sued.
And I think people's standards at that time were different. Like, that's what's so scary about it.
It was different, 2018.
Maybe you're doing amazing vetting, carrier vetting now, and maybe there's less double brokering now because there's more people talking about it.
Is there less? I don't think there's less, Julie.
I think
it's certainly getting a lot more attention.
There's more attention on it.
There's definitely more attention, but I don't think it's less. I have not.
So to me, like, that's what's scary. Like, this is you can do everything right going forward, but
any of these cases can be brought forward. And that was the thing that, when all this noise was out there and we were talking about it, and Matt and I were being accused of being just, clickbaiting these headlines. The reality is that until you had been involved in these substantial cases or have covered them the way we have and the way you have, you don't realize just how big and how, these things can go on for years. The idea that you get in, people watch too much TV, Matt. They watch Law and Order, they watch CSI, they watch
Lincoln Lawyer,
Boston Legal.
Yeah. The idea you could say,
and they assume that, the worst, by the way, the worst legal scenes on TV are Landman. Have you seen these shows?
I can't watch anything with the law. It's so removed from reality, like Suits. Like, I didn't pass the bar exam, but I'm going to practice as a lawyer. It doesn't work that way. And
even Landman, there was a scene in Landman. She's this young, fiery, highly attractive girl, just got like this. And you see these like cringy scenes where she's going in and shaking down the attorneys. And I'm like, I've had my share of covering cases, had my share of cases. I've never seen anything like that. That's just not how it works.
It's like I have this exculpatory evidence that no one's seen yet. Let me put it in. Like,
I'm going to put you out of business. No, it doesn't work that way. So anyways, I think but these cases are real and the damages are substantial, but it's going to take many years to sort this out. It's not going away.
And lupus superior, let me be very clear. If lupus superior is upheld, and again, I don't think that it does, but if lupus superior is upheld and brokers can be considered co-employers of a driver who they don't ever speak to directly, The brokerage industry is done. That's it. That's the end of it. There's nothing around it. There's no way if you get off of that ramp, you are toast. Now, vicarious liability claims have been made for many, many decades. There's no doubt appeals will happen. And again, I believe CH wins. But that's millions of dollars tied up in litigation as you go through the process of appeals and follow-up appeals and motions to reconsider. So this is just the beginning. And I think a lot of brokers are rightly saying, where is Congress? Like, okay, we have the FMCSA, we want them to do more, but where is Congress? Where's our statute that explains what we're supposed to do and what we're not supposed to do? Because again, no requirement for brokers to carry liability insurance. It doesn't necessary. Now you have to. So these are interesting times, guys. This is very interesting times.
Well, Brent Hutto pointed out, I talked to him a couple, and Brent Hutto was at Truck Stop and now is at Truck Parking Club. He's been around this industry, certainly around brokers, his whole, his predominance of his career once he left Brenda Riley. And he pointed out, he goes, the reason this is such an important thing is because brokers now play such an important role as a percentage of freight. If they were a small marginal bit player of a couple percent like they were, 20 years ago, no one would care. The fact is that the Supreme Court, I think, looking at it, the question I have for you, Matt, there's been so much. Look, we had been a part of this as well, but also broader media. You had the 60 Minutes episode that happened not too long before this case. You've had, all of the major media has been bringing the state of trucking safety. Do we think that by any chance influenced the way the court thought about this?
Well, in terms of like the Lupus Superior case, like that's just going to be the normal. Someone has died, someone's at fault, who has money? Lupus Superior has no money. Who else has money? Oh, C.H. Robinson, they have unlimited money. I do think the Montgomery case directly related to what we've been seeing in the news around non-domiciled CDLs and English language proficiency. I think the more conservative justices wanted to find a way to go after brokers when they hired people that were undocumented or couldn't communicate in English. That's what I was thinking, especially when you heard the oral arguments. I don't think that's a great analogy for them, but that's what they kind of latched onto. But the thing that I want to encourage the brokerage industry to do specifically is you need to talk to America. Nobody knows what you do and nobody feels sorry for you. But the reality is, as you guys correctly mentioned, 20 to 30% of all freight goes through a third-party intermediary. So the brokers are inextricably linked to our supply chain. And that industry has to do a much better job advocating for itself in regular, reasonable legislation, but also telling the American people, this is what we do. We're travel agents. We're not guarantors of the performance of a motor carrier. We're not de facto regulators. And that's the part that I think a lot of Americans don't understand about how things get to their shelves or get to their doorstep.
So Matt, I think, Kevin Nolan, the founder of NTG, Nolan Transportation Group, the founder of OTR, he's a, I wouldn't call infamous founder, but certainly a famous founder, has pointed out, and he talked about this at our fraud summit the week after Montgomery, is that brokers have to clean up their image. The idea that freight bros with a big gong in the office, just the Zen culture, if you will, is not a good representation, and juries are not going to be sympathetic to that. I mean, look, when I was at U.S. Express, and I ran a payments business that happened to rent some space from U.S. Express Transcard, we would bring in alcohol because we were like, hey, we're a different culture. And it was like, no, you're not, because we're a trucking company. This cannot happen during hours because of the idea that if anybody ever got a hold of it or if that story ever leaked, it would be a bad look for U.S. Express. You're operating trucks, you're dealing with safety. The fact that you have alcohol in the building was a sign that, we as a company weren't taking it very serious.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. The image of the freight broker, how you hire and retain talent, is changing. And if you look back to some of the other cases, I've used the one with TQL, my good buddies over in Ohio. They were, bringing people in to work for them for $30,000 or $35,000 a year. They're working 60 hours a week. Chained to the desk. And how do you make people stay in the office?
That is not the official thing that happened, just to be clear.
No one was
no one was chained.
That was the perception by the way it was described. This poor lady who ended up having a miscarriage, was overworked. I think there was an expectation she showed up to work, I believe it was the next day, or even after. Like it was just a tragic situation.
Yeah, I'm actually even referring to the class action lawsuit that TQL remains fighting after a decade, where they misclassified 4,500 employees and said they were exempt from overtime. And so they basically made these people that should have been being paid hourly as a salary and saying, oh, we're not going to pay the overtime. And they fought that viciously. But the reality is the freight brokerage industry is trying to recruit men and women from colleges who were excited to work 10, 12-hour days, work nights, work weekends, and to make that culture kind of make sense and seem fun. Oh, here's the booze, here's the happy hour, here's all this stuff that's going on. And so when Americans look at what freight brokers are doing, these are not people that are just drinking and being ridiculous. These are professionals who care deeply about safely delivering freight on time and undamaged. And they build relationships with motor carriers to make things happen, like this Lupus Superior case. Over 270 times, C.H. Robinson used this motor carrier with a satisfactory safety rating, and a lot of other brokers used them too. And now you have this question of, okay, well, if you can hire someone who's satisfactory, what is a reasonable vetting process? Is there any such thing as a reasonable vetting process? The answer, probably not.
Someone close to the case, I think is really interesting because I'm literally, as we're talking to it, someone that's close to it said that really the argument in the Lupus case was that traditional brokerage was matchmaking, connecting shippers with carriers, taking a cut. Modern brokerage, especially as C.H. Robinson does it, especially in the Lupus incidents, is a direct connection to the driver, GPS tracking the driver's phone, steps into a level of control that starts to look like employment. The fact that there is track and trace basically is the case that the plaintiff's attorneys were making against C.H. Robinson. And look, track and trace, you know this, Matt. I know this. That is now a core requirement of every broker.
I mean, shippers. Well, I mean,
they demand it. They absolutely demand it.
Even prior to the fraud environment, when it's required for that, right? You need to protect your cargo, you need to understand where it's going, that actually the right person has it, and you have to be able to track and trace it to do it. But even prior to that, shippers require it.
Well, the track and trace, apparently this 10...
Is it because it's on their phone versus another way of doing it, like on the driver's personal phone?
There's a direct connection to the driver, according to someone familiar with the case. Yeah. GPS tracking the driver's phone. That's important because again, if you're at U.S. Express or Werner or Swift or you're tracking the
your
device.
Own equipment.
You're tracking the equipment. You're tracking the ping. Well, you have macro point. You have trucker tools. You have C.H. Robinson. I don't know who they use.
P44, whoever. Yeah.
Highway maybe. I mean, you're now dealing with direct access to the driver. It is an interesting idea.
I think the commenter is wrong. I mean, I'll be honest. I think that's a good way to think about it. You have these.
We'll say he's very close to the case, Matt.
That's fair. I have no doubt.
And saw this play out in the courtroom.
Yeah. Again, I have no doubt that they saw that happen in the courtroom, and jurors were interested in saying, yes, that sounds like an employer relationship. But let me just remind everybody. I mean, FedEx Ground contractors that come to your house and deliver packages do not work for FedEx Ground. And that litigation has happened in every single state you can imagine, where they say, oh, no, this driver was controlled by FedEx Ground, therefore it's an employee. Same with the gig companies or even Amazon when they deliver packages to your house. So even though you say, well, that's a lot of control. Well, if I have a painter come to my house and I say, you got to be here at 9 because I'm going to be gone at 8. I need you to be painting this color on this wall first, do this one next. Just that level of control does not make you an employee. It doesn't make you an employee. Now, in some place like California or other states, they may say, well, we're going to assume it's an employee and we're going to have you prove to us that it's not an employee. So yes, there is tracking, whether it's passive or active tracking, but it is not the same level of control that an employer exerts. Like a cashier at Walmart is not going to be an independent contractor 99 times out of 100. But the janitorial staff, maybe those are contractors. So the challenge we have, and this is what I spend my entire career trying to do, is take legal concepts that are difficult to unpack and oftentimes with a lot of legal jargon and things like Latin, and make it accessible to a normal person to understand. So yes, the broker has visibility into the motor carrier. They do move a lot more freight than they used to, but they are not controlling the asset. They don't own the truck. They don't own the trailer. They don't maintain those assets. They don't register and license those assets. They are simply intermediaries. Now, the exercise of control is always something brokers are mindful of. And C.H. Robinson Robinson, as from their statement, seems that they were doing what they ought to be doing. So if someone was in the courtroom and say, oh, clearly CH was the employer, or they borrowed that employee because they told them, here's where you have to go, here's where you go next, I need access to the tracking information. I don't think that passes the legal test. The facts may feel like that's an employee, but the law is not going to align with that.
So
It wouldn't.
the comment from this individual is the quote unquote borrowed employee is normally a question of law to be decided by the judge unless there's a set of facts that need to be evaluated by the jury. What happened in Lupus is that 12 jurors, a 10 to 12 verdict, decided that there were enough facts to justify termination. And I believe what I am understanding from this conversation that I'm literally happening as we're on air is that it's the tracking device on the phone that was the hinge of the jurors that influenced the jury. And then it goes back to, well, I track my Uber.
That's what I was thinking.
I
I
tracked my
tracked my
DoorDash.
pizza getting delivered.
Is my
but-
burrito, my $28 burrito that is coming by DoorDash, am I responsible as an employee of that driver? I don't know. That would be the case. I mean, I'm clearly.
Didn't dispatch him, didn't create the route.
I'm giving him, I want to know where he's at. My burrito's getting cold.
Yeah, I mean, this is the fundamental
Speaking of, I need
question.
to order a burrito while we're on here.
This is the question, though. I mean, when you have the facts on your side, you argue the facts. When the law is on the side, you argue the law. When neither is on your side, you just keep screaming, and that's what I'm very, very good at. Here's what I think will happen. So there are facts that the appellate courts are not going to reverse, like the findings of fact by the jury. These are the things that took place. Those are going to be on the appellate record. But those facts, as a matter of law, may be insufficient. So what happens with the trial court is jury does what they do. The judge applies the law as best they can. They build the appellate record, and then you have the appellate process. Very often, I mean, criminal cases are totally separate, but in the civil cases, in numbers as substantial as this, with impacts as wide-ranging as this, you have to anticipate the appeal will follow. And the court will look at all the facts, they'll look at the law in the entire state of Texas, and they will apply the facts to the law. And it will likely be the case, again, this is my call, I could be wrong, but I hope I come back and say I was right. I think C.H. Robinson does not have enough facts to support that they had borrowed that employee, because if they had, what broker survives in these vicarious liabilities?
Well, I think what I understand, again, take it from what I'm getting right now on my phone, is that the effort by the plaintiff's attorneys was to sideswipe or sidestep, I should say, sidestep, not sideswipe, what you don't want to do. Sidestep the case with Warner was thrown out, was this vicarious liability, is by making him the employee of C.H. Robinson through borrowed employment that they thought that would hold up on appeal. At least that's the way that the plaintiff's attorneys approach it. By the way,
Okay.
the DoorDash guy
I'm
that's
wondering-
delivering my burrito now works for me according to the state of Texas. I'm going to tell this guy.
He works for
on the
DoorDash,
way,
not for you. You're
he
the
works
shipper.
for
You're the
me
receiver.
according to the state of Texas. I'm tracking the dude.
I mean, you are paying him because you're tipping him. So you're
You
paying
think I'm
him
in charge of him? If he ends up in an accident, can I be
think that's
sued?
preposterous.
Just remember
That's
when we had.
is that not the same
I
argument?
think I think
I
both
need
are
to be on
preposterous.
that. That's what I would argue.
Okay.
Well, just remember,
I
like
have-
in the. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, if you want to finish, I have a separate question. So if you had to finish.
Well,
the
I use an example. Just remember when AB 5 was passed in California that made everybody assumed to be an employee. You have to prove you're not an employee. The gig companies, DoorDash, Uber, Grubhub, all of them spent over $220 million to get a thing called Proposition 22, which explicitly carved them out of the regulation of AB 5. So the gig companies, they know a thing or two about this type of litigation.
Matt, the absurdity of that entire thing was that AB 5 was created because of Uber. I mean, that was the original purpose of it. It was funded by the unions, by the taxi medallion companies. Basically, were created AB 5 to go after Uber specifically. I mean, it was the Uber bills. What the media in California referred to it as. It gets passed. Assembly Bill 5 gets passed, and then, because of the amount of money these companies spent on lobbying to change the law, they got an exemption while everybody else has to deal with it.
And there's an important thing to remember about that, and same with Proposition 22. The gig company said, if you classify these workers as employees, we're leaving the state. We are not going to participate.
And everybody wants their $28 burrito delivered.
Don't we all? Don't
get
we
an
all?
Uber from their phone. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, look, if you've dealt with taxis pre-Uber, you know how miserable that process is.
All right.
Absolutely.
So, since I read Kingston's article this morning, first thing, Crane versus Liberty Lane and this whole Penske thing. So the vicarious liability, I mean, really, it's sort of the same thing that they're saying, because Penske assumed control and responsibility for the freight, then it can be deemed a statutory employer. Is it different in this case because Penske is a carrier and not just a broker? So it was tendered to Penske, who was a carrier, then they tendered it to their brokerage portion of their business that was then tendered to Liberty Lane, that was then tendered to OK Trans.
Things been passed around.
But is it different for Penske since they are a carrier as well as a third party, or is it the same?
I think the reality is there's going to be the same kind of legal analysis. The independent contractor case law in the state of Texas will be what gets applied to these cases, make their way up. It's important to remember for everybody, and we talk this all the time on freight expectations, most motor carriers are woefully underinsured for the liability risk that they create when they're on the road. Just the nature of how this industry works, most carriers are underinsured. The big ones, not so much, but the small ones certainly are. So the plaintiff attorney has to figure out who has the money, who can I go after? And so the leasing companies, the asset owners, they go after whoever they possibly can. Leasing companies have their own kind of version of F4A. It's called the Graves Amendment. So they can say, hey, I leased it. I didn't own it. I didn't operate it. Someone else was operating it. So the same question you kind of outlined, yeah, it's going to be the same kind of process of how you appeal this. But the reality is the plaintiff attorneys need some meat. Who's got the meat? And even in cases like this Penske case that we see a court making a ruling and it gets appealed, sometimes these cases happen and the companies just pay it. They say, okay, I don't want to litigate this. Here's your money. And so even if you might have legal grounds where you might be successful, you might just capitulate and settle anyway, which only emboldens the plaintiff's counsels to continue to press the envelope and say, where can I go next? The Wabash case in St. Louis is another great example where Wabash opted not to appeal. They just settled it and moved on. So there's a precedent for people just giving up. And some companies, the cases are too important. They just can't do that.
So, Matt, we'll be right back. Stay with us. We're going to get into this a little deeper. I want to talk about this Penske case. Let's show what our studio in Chicago looks like, because I want you to see how awesome and badass this thing is going to be. It is right now a piano concert venue. It can host about 100 people. It's recitals and stuff. We're going to host it in Chicago. It's going to open up in January. Matt, you're going to be there for the inaugural show.
That's right. I'll be on January 29th. I will be 42 years old. So wow, it's a
You're
birthday
an old man.
celebration, maybe.
Enough for us to fall apart. We'll be right back.
The world doesn't wait, so neither do they. Wheels on the interstate, boots on the site, hands on the shipment. We build for the world out here, and we build it with the people who live it. Ideas from the field, made real by world-class R&D. To keep the operation sharp, the front lines safe, and the world moving. From one cab to a global network, billions of miles, trillions of data points, every one making your operation better. And we never build it alone. Samsara, built with operators.
Once a year, the entire freight industry stops what it's doing and comes to one place, Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is F3, the Future of Freight Festival. It isn't just a conference. It's the largest festival in freight, built to pull you all the way in. The energy, the ideas, the atmosphere, and the people who move this industry forward. Over 50 speakers, 4 events across 3 days. Founders, executives, innovators, and disruptors, all under one roof, all asking the same question: what comes next? On the main stage, the sharpest minds in freight take on the biggest questions in the business, the trends, the technology, and the forces shaping what's ahead. Then the clock starts. 7 minutes, no exceptions. The cutting edge of freight tech goes head-to-head, live, battling for best in show. When the time's up, the lights go out. And in between, the conversations that don't happen anywhere else. The connections that change the trajectory of your business. The relationships you'll carry long after you leave. Because when the sessions end, the festival begins. Live entertainment, unforgettable experiences, a celebration of the world of freight, and an energy you won't find at any other event in the industry. The leaders you need, the access you won't get anywhere else. This is where knowledge is shared, where deals get done, where the future of freight gets decided. F3, Future of Freight Festival, October 27th and 28th. The Signal, Chattanooga, Tennessee. We'll see you there. Register now at live.freightwaves.com.
I told the DoorDash delivery guy that's delivering my burrito that now, I was like, if you don't hurry up, you're fired. He works for me now, according to the state of Texas. Matt, craziness in the state of Texas. I mean, it's hard to make the case that Texas is a business-friendly state when you have these massive lawsuits and nuclear lawsuits. I mean, I get that that is a different part of the, like I studied the whole three branches of government. I get it. But it does strike me that these cases that we keep, I know Texas is a big state. I know there's an enormous amount of freight that moves across their highways. But the fact that these big nuclear lawsuits keep happening in Texas, it just strikes me as doesn't feel like a business-friendly state.
I mean, we have the Friends of the American Trucking Associations that has come up with these terms called judicial hellholes, and Texas is one of them. And the reality is Texas is an importer of people from California, as California exports their people. And so some of those politics make it there. But to your point, the reality is there's a lot of traffic, a lot of things moving around, and so more accidents happen. And that becomes the pathway to seeing these crazy verdicts. And plaintiff attorneys are absolutely hiring more and more transportation professionals because they realize there is so much money to be made in these cases. And that is because, again, the trucking companies may not have the right insurance or enough insurance, so you go after whoever has the biggest pocket. Some states that are far more conservative and less populated, you don't really see this type of verdicts, but we are increasingly seeing them in just about everywhere because people are watching these TV shows or these commercials or they're watching the billboards and they realize this is like a lottery ticket for a lot of people if they get hit by a truck. And we don't ever want to have anyone get injured in these cases. But even though there's 5,000 people that die every year in truck-related accidents, trucks aren't the ones who are at fault in most of those cases. And yet trucking companies still bear the burden.
The attorney or the person affiliated with this case, that's the lupus case, is saying that had C.H. Robinson said they were tracking the load and not the driver, that the jury would have been more sympathetic to C.H. Robinson's case. The fact that they said they were tracking the driver is really the sort of hinge of the argument that was an
Okay, but how could they have tracked
By the way,
load?
I am tracking, just
The
to be clear,
shipper
I
could
am
have
tracking
tracked.
the burrito.
That's
I am
right,
not
that's
tracking
right.
the driver. He told me he doesn't work for me, told me to go pound sand.
I think
He'll
that
still might deliver my burrito.
But
Yeah,
how
I mean,
can
the tracking-
broker
go ahead.
track the load versus the driver? Because they can't.
Well,
The shipper
I
can
think
track the
case
load
is,
if
again,
they're
it's
the
all
ones who
optics.
actually loaded the freight. The
It's
shipper.
all optics. I'm just tracking the load. And if you're tracking for
important.
U.S. Express's SATCOM, platform science or whatever, you're tracking the load. You're not tracking the driver, right?
You're tracking the truck.
You're tracking the load.
If
But
the
the
tracking
ELD
that's
is
the
in.
case.
But the ELD is in the truck. It's not in the trailer, and the load's in the trailer.
But the load, the shipment is loaded. Look, when I take the Domino's Pizza, dude, the Domino's Pizza little tracker, which is fake, by the way. Anyone who knows the whole story about Domino's is actually just a time. Matt, you're learning something on FreightWaves Today. This is really good information.
I rely.
It's not
on
fake
that
anymore.
tracker.
Not
It's all
anymore.
simulated. It's all simulated. It is a time-based thing that is, at least it
This
used
hurts
to be.
me.
Someone's going
This
to write me
hurts
some
me.
hate mail and tell me I'm wrong.
I think it's real now. I think it used to be fake. I think it's
You
real
also probably think reality TV is real.
now. I do not.
My wife
Well,
does.
let me just-
I'm like, this is all
let me
scripted
just-
as nonsense. And she's like, no, it's not. It's real.
Let me just build off the
the
distinction. So if people are using cell phones for tracking of freight, the driver has downloaded an app. If that's a company provided phone, that's a different matter than a personal phone. But I want to be very clear. And again, for the person in the audience that was close to this case, my feeling is it's a distinction without meaning. Whether you're tracking the load or tracking the driver, it's not about what you passively do with that freight or that driver, because there's things that are passively tracking all of us. Our cell phones already track us all the time. It's about what you exercise in the control. I think the really important thing, and this is just, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm a law professor and a lawyer. I have the right to be wrong from time to time. These cases are often about how jurors wrestle with something horrifying, which is someone dying in a catastrophic way with no way to say goodbye, and you have no way to make anybody feel better. The only thing that lawyers can do in these cases is help make the person who's responsible pay whatever damages the jury believes is reasonable. And so this becomes an exercise, just like we talked about the Werner Enterprises case also many months ago, was you had dead children. And it's horrifying when you have someone who has perished in something catastrophic like this, and you want to do something. And so you may latch on to different facts, like, oh, they were tracking the driver. Even like a week ago when this case first dropped, people had said, oh, I actually think that they were talking to the driver. I think C.H. Robinson spoke to the driver. And again, that's not what happened, at least according to C.H. Robinson's statement. So we'll see what happens on appeal. But my feeling is what the facts that I'm reading and learning about does not indicate to me that C.H. Robinson controlled that driver enough to have them become a
The jury felt otherwise, Matt. I mean, that's the.
Oh, yeah.
You talked about this. You know this well. I don't know that our audience does. It's talked about the fact that it's not what you did or did not do or did not know. It's what you should have done or should have known that is often what sways the jury. It is. That's the issue, is that it's emotion driven. We're all angry when someone passes away, when someone dies. What price do you put on it? And you make the case, they're big companies, they can afford it. And maybe they didn't invest as much money into safety as they could have, or they should be punished. And I've said this before, and I've gotten some hate over it. Juries are not going to be sympathetic to freight brokers. They just aren't. They're going to be far more likely to be sympathetic to trucking companies and truck drivers.
Well, and they're not even as sympathetic there. And they're not even really very sympathetic there, right? They're certainly not going to be sympathetic to brokers.
Like, I think the freight broker has a bigger problem because he has nobody to relate with. I mean, these guys are hitting. I mean, I think Kevin Nolan said it best. He dressed us up on a suit because he's like, we got to clean up our app.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, this is why I think what Chris Burrows is doing with the TIA, trying to get out in front of Washington about what brokers are actually doing every single day, is helpful. But ultimately, we're going to see a lot more of these cases. That's just the nature of it. Maybe this drives further autonomous trucking. We'll see. But these cases are not going to slow down.
Earlier this week, maybe it was the last weeks are running together, man. I think it was this week. We had an economist who did a study on the people fighting autonomous trucks. One of the biggest constituents fighting autonomous trucks were plaintiffs' attorneys. They have lobbied against autonomous trucks. It's a pretty telling thing if you want to know the truth.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, just to give an example, so this Lupus Superior case, again, I'm not doing hypotheticals. I'm just kind of thinking, speculating maybe. But if that was an autonomous truck, probably doesn't crash into a bunch of parked vehicles, probably has protocols and safety things that are in place that would prevent these types of accidents. And that's the reality. Autonomous trucks are likely to be safer than any human being driver ever could be. Now, they can't do it what Saya does. We love Saya. I love LTL. I love those pups and those dollies. Those are great. But there's types of trucking that would very easily be automated. And when you have all of these sensors and cameras, it makes it much more difficult for a plaintiff attorney to say, well, clearly this was the thing that was at fault, because it's not really negligence, it's product liability unless the motor carrier who's operating that truck doesn't maintain it. So I'm not surprised at all to hear you have the plaintiff attorneys, the organized labor that oppose this kind of stuff. And unfortunately or fortunately, they're going to lose out because progress moves in a very specific direction, and you can't stop the trends and forces. And we see the FMC.
One of the things that he pointed out is that the companies that are behind this technology, Waymo, Daimler's got a big with Torque. You've got a lot of sort of movement in autonomous investment, are not doing a very good job. They're behind the times of actually lobbying on their own behalf. Is that, he pointed out that Uber was so fast and furious. I'm talking passenger transportation, that oftentimes they were already well established in a market. Austin is a great example of this, where they outlawed Uber, but the consumers. We talk about California with AB5. Consumers were so used to it that they were in arms, and there was pressure. And that's really what it's going to take at the national level for these autonomous companies. They got to step up, and if they really want to protect, to avoid legislation, they're going to have to spend some money on lobbying. And
I would say that I would actually argue that the autonomous trucking companies have done a remarkable job at the state level, because that's where this testing begins. It's intrastate commerce. And you look at Kodiak and Aurora and others that are moving freight right now in Texas from Houston to Dallas every single day. They know that that's where they have to win immediately. So give a good example. Twice now, the state of California has tried to ban driverless trucks in that state. And twice, Governor Newsom has vetoed that legislation. So they have done a great job, as far as we can tell, of making sure that on the local level, they're winning. At the federal level, we have a lot more work to be done. There's going to be legislation, more likely than not. There already is a talking thing called the Self-Drive Act, which is a talking bill, a discussion draft. But we know FMCSA is already evaluating a lot more stuff when it comes to autonomous trucks. My feeling is when the rulemakings begin, it goes quickly, and I don't think you can stop it. I think they're already in a position where there's certain types of freight that will never move with human beings in 10 or 15 years.
By the way, drivers, it is at armchair ATTY. Send your hate mail that way. We know you're going to get it. At Freight Alias, you're welcome to talk to me, but really the person advocating is Mr. Matt Leffler.
I mean, I think you can always advocate for jobs, but I don't see any way to advocate against the safety of autonomy.
I mean, the safety
right?
gate
Like
is
there's
pretty clear.
right.
I mean, I hate to say it, it is very clear, and unfortunately, it is a reality. We're going to need these jobs, these driving jobs, for a while. We'll be here to cover it. Everyone have a great week. We will be back next week with Freight Expectations, but we're also here every single day at noon.
Thanks for having me.